Hey everybody, it's Buckshot, and so normally we call this the Weekly Wealth Widget. That's what we have on wealthformula.com as a written version of this message, but we're going to start calling this the Weekly Buckshot just for YouTube, and because it sounds kind of cool, right? So anyway, Weekly Buckshot for this week is how to invest in something about which you know nothing, right? I think this is actually a really useful thing because opportunities come up all the time. For example, imagine investing right around Prohibition, okay? All of a sudden, Budweiser, Coors, maybe they weren't there initially, but imagine getting in on anything related to alcohol in 1933. And December of 1933 was the end of Prohibition. And it was like a lot of people who made a lot of money in alcohol, including Joseph Kennedy, the patriarch of the Kennedy family, John F. Kennedy's father. The Kennedys massively, I mean, they made their money, Joe Kennedy made his money in commodities, but then massively amplified his wealth in liquor by acquiring distribution rights for Scotch Whisky and after Prohibition, of course. And the result for him and his family, generational wealth. So, you don't necessarily have to know everything about something from day one to invest in it, but you got to be a quick learn. Now, the other end of Prohibition, or I shouldn't say the other end, but a new kind of prohibition is about to end right now, whether you like it or not, and that's cannabis. Now, it's legal in several states, including California here, and, I know there's a lot of resistance to this, and there's a lot of questions, whether the Trump administration is going to continue to put pressure on this industry and, not turn the other eye like the Obama administration did, and that Jeff Sessions is going to, clamp down on this. But there is, in my opinion, no stopping this right now. The French have a saying, they call it the fait accompli, which basically means this is a done deal, ladies and gentlemen. This is too powerful of a force. It's way too far down the line. Okay, so even if it gets stopped during or slowed down during the Trump administration, there's going to be administrations after that. Eventually, this is going to happen. Recreational marijuana use will be legal. It will be prohibition ended once more. Now, listen, I'm not making any kind of moral judgment on pot. I'm not like, yeah, pot's legal. Frankly, I don't really care. I'm not a pot guy myself, and I don't really like the smell of it. And you can see those pot heads walking around with the cannabis patches on their backpacks. That actually kind of annoys me. So I'm not a big fan, but I do recognize a movement when I see one that's going to become our new reality, just like the stuff I've been talking about with distributed ledger technology or blockchain, Bitcoin for everyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about. So when you see a movement like this, what do? That's the question, right? I don't know anything. I see you don't know anything about pot. I don't know anything about pot. How do you get involved? Well, in the case of distributed ledger technology with the blockchain stuff that I was talking about, 6 months ago, I didn't really know much about anything either. I thought it was kind of a joke. But then I started talking to people and realized, this is the real deal. And I knew some people who I know, like, and trust that made, who really convinced me that this is something that is not, a flash in the pan, that it's not going to just go away tomorrow. And so I learned as much as I could. Like, that's always the first step, right? And the next thing you know, it started to become a hobby for me because I got really interested in it. And I knew some people who gave me some tips. And my crypto hobby suddenly became a very, very profitable hobby. Now, the thing about cannabis here, though, because that's really kind of what I'm focusing on today, is that this is an industry that is a little different, right? Because I don't really, I don't know very many people who are involved with cannabis. And those who I do, I'm not sure that I really like most of them. And then the ones that I like I probably don't trust. And, you know, there might be one exception to that or two exceptions to that. But for the most part, that's the problem with this, that you have to invest with people. If you don't, you know, if you're going into a dark cave, bring someone who's been there before, right? So, you know, and that's the challenge with pot and marijuana investing, frankly. But, you know, on the other hand, listen, even with multifamily, right, which is, in my view, the mother of all no-brainer assets, multifamily residential real estate, you still need to know what you're doing, or at least work with people and invest with people who do. So where do you start? Well, again, if you're reading or if you're listening to me, if you're watching me, or reading what I'm putting out there, you're already probably in the process, one of those people who tries to educate themselves all the time. So always start doing your research. That's the first place you start, and learn as much as you can. Now the next step, though, and this is really something that I found to be true in life as an investor, and really in anything that has created success for me, is you have to build your tribe, right? That's where that's really where the magic starts. Again, let's go back to this example of cryptocurrency. So I had a friend of mine who was really smart in cryptocurrencies, and after I got really interested in it, I learned, and I was like, hey man, like, tell me what's going on, tell me what you're looking at. So, you know what, he actually told me about an initial coin offering that he was really interested in, and so he sent me the information. I looked at it, totally made sense, and I was like, gosh, this is awesome. I have to do this, right? But I wouldn't have done it if I didn't have a friend who I already know who'd made a lot of money in this area, and who you know, who knew what he was doing. So that was the guy who I went into the dark cave with. So I went ahead and I invested, and the next thing you know, that I invested about $50,000. At one point it was up to like $4 million. But you know, it came down to earth, but I still 10x'd it. And again, probably won't sell that until I get, you know, probably twice that. So listen, the point here is that I'm trying to make, and this is really important, education is number one, but you don't have to be really smart, right? You have to be smart enough to understand this. Most of these things, though, are not that challenging. You just need to be smart enough to understand the basic concepts, and then you need to be around really smart people. You don't have to be that smart yourself, but you do need to be around people who are smarter than you at different things and ride their coattails. Really what this means is that wealth comes down to two things. I've talked about it in many different ways, but this is one way to look at it. It is education plus your tribe. Anyway, that's been part of my wealth formula. And it's worked for me really well so far, and hopefully it'll work for you as well. By the way, if you are an accredited investor, what does that mean, by the way? It means you make at least $200,000 per year, or you make $300,000 per year for filing jointly, or you have a net worth of $1 million outside of your personal residence. You are an accredited investor. You don't have to sign up for something or send an application. It's sort of like being pregnant. Either you are or you're not, right? Anyway, if you're one of those people and you want to be part of my tribe and people I know, go to wealthformula.com and just click on the Investor Club tab, and let's set up a call. That's it for me this week on the weekly Buckshot. This is Buck Joffrey.